Hello.
Songwriters, musicians, guitar players. I'm here with Dr. Tommaso Zillio of Music Theory for Guitar. It's very
Hello,
exciting.
everybody.
He's going to give me some excellent ideas, and you also. So, the title of today's stream is How to Develop Your Chord Compass to Get to New Musical Destinations. So, if I were to lock you in a room with a guitar or a keyboard, and I'm only going to let you out when you have a song, you're going to start thinking about which chords to choose for this song pretty quickly. And you're going to think about a tune and you're going to think about some words. Now, the chords, the melody, and the words are not the only things that make a song sound good, but they do tend to be the things that we think of straight away. And we know we're going to have to make decisions about them. And so then comes the question, what are our choices for making those decisions? How do we go about making those decisions? And if we had some other ways of making decisions about what chords we're going to use in our song or in different parts of our song, or even how to think about it, how would that add to what we're able to do in our songwriting? So when I started out with songwriting, I pretty much just chose one chord and then I played whatever other chords I knew to see which one I thought I wanted to hear next. And that's perfectly fine. We were probably experimenting that way is perfectly fine. You decide what you like. But after a while, if that's all you're doing and you're not necessarily expanding the amount of chords that you know, it can start sounding a little repetitive, or you can simply get bored of doing it that way. So it can be, after a while, inadequate as a means of finding what the best expression of your idea is musically. And the other main ways that one might get ideas for chords would be to take chord progressions that might have worked well in other songs, and certainly chord progressions are not copyright, so we can do this, and you don't have to learn that many songs before you realize you're seeing some of the same chord progressions in these very different songs. But what options do we have apart from those things, apart from random experimenting or taking ideas that have worked in the past? So Tommaso's going to help us find some answers to that. He has many fields of expertise. He's been making music theory accessible to hundreds of thousands of people for over a decade on his massively successful YouTube channel, Music Theory for Guitar, and via his in-person and online teaching. He is the person who has just been traveling to look at old music theory manuscripts in a library on microfilm in order to come back and tell us how we can use them in layperson's words. And he spent years reading all kinds of medieval arcane theory texts. He's probably going to write a bestseller on the person that tried to steal the best chord progression from the church in Italy, and then that'll be made into a very successful film, and he'll write the music. So he can help us cherry pick some of the most usable ideas.
The Da Vinci Code of music
The Da
theory.
Vinci Code
Of music theory. Now, Diana, first of all, if you are locking me in a room with a guitar and a keyboard, and you're letting me out only when I finish a song, I'm not going to finish a song because I'm going to have fun there until I can. Okay, that's the first thing.
There's a little skeleton.
Totally. Yeah, you're going to find me there playing.
with its hands kind of stretched into an improbable chord shape.
Probably. So that's the first thing. But yeah, let's talk about how to put chords together. So the first thing is this. And I repeat this to all my students. Not the other one.
I'm really good at this.
This new system for streaming is always a bit iffy. But coming back to the chords, one thing I say to all my students, I think I say to everybody that asks me about music theory, and I keep repeating it, is this: that in music theory, there are no rules. Okay? Meaning that at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want as long as it sounds good to you. Now, there are guidelines to make things sound good, but you have to remember that it's music. So there is a subjective element to it, which means that sometimes people like something and other people don't like something. Sometimes some chords sound good and correct to some people, and sometimes they don't. The same two chords, or 3 or 4 or 5, can sound good to a person and not good to other people. That's okay. We should not use music theory to justify and say this is correct, this is not correct. We can use music theory to find out what we like, how to reproduce it, how to make it, how to extend the idea, how to get more of it, and to find out what make your ears tingle with pleasure when you hear music. That's what we can do. Okay, not deciding if it's correct or not correct or acceptable or whatever else. Okay, I mean, after all, for instance, some people like jazz and some people don't like jazz. What do you think is the difference? Okay, that people are different. That's it. Okay, so if somebody likes jazz, studying jazz theory, it's great. But it doesn't like jazz, studying jazz theory, I mean, you can still study jazz theory, but it's gonna give you chord progression, melodies, situations that you don't really like. So you need to study the theory that works for you, okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing, like Diana was saying, a song can start in many different ways. You can start from the chord, you can start from the melody, you can start from the rhythm, you can start from many other things, okay? There's not only harmony. We always have these things when we think about music theory, that we think that music theory is just chords, harmony, chord progressions. What chords go together? How do we call this chord? What's the correct way to call this chord? And that's one aspect of music theory. There are many others, okay? For instance, you can use music theory to determine if you want a longer verse or a shorter verse, or what is the right relationship between verse and chorus, what happens in a verse and what happens in a chorus. You can use music theory to determine what part of the song should go louder or quieter, or what kind of rhythm complement the rhythm you have, and all these kind of things. So there's much, 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 much more to music theory than just harmony and than just chords. But at the same time, yes, we can admit that harmony and chords are an important part of music theory, if nothing else, because we know a lot about those. Okay, there's lots of material that we can learn, lots of tricks that we can learn, lots of ideas that we can make our own to write our own songs. So far, so good. By the way, since we are here, everybody listening to us, please say hi in the chat, tell us where you're from, and we are taking questions, or at least I'm taking questions. So if you have questions, write them down in the chat. We're going to read them. We are going to answer them.
Yes, definitely do give Tommaso your questions. Now is a great time to be able to ask him. Thank you for restating that theory is not constraining us, and it's not an infinite, it's the things that are the bits of understanding that are going to give you a lot of payback in terms of how accurately they predict something's going to feel do not take a very long time to get to grips with. So there's certain things that if once you know how this works, it's a bit like understanding that if you put Marmite on your toast, you can predict it's going to taste salty. If you put honey on your toast, you're going to predict. It's not a surprise every time you have honey how it tastes. That's like music theory. It's not a surprise when you know you develop expectations, and when you know how you want something to feel in a song, that's when it's helpful.
Yes.
So let's imagine somebody's at home right now and they've got a kind of like 20 minutes.
Wait, because you said a great thing, and I want to highlight that because I totally love this metaphor that music theory is like cooking, okay? Because everybody can learn how to cook decently in a short amount of time.
Yes.
You don't have to learn everything. You can cook to your satisfaction.
But even if you can't cook, you still know what honey's going to taste like and Marmite's going to taste like.
Yes,
so you
absolutely,
still get a predictive understanding of how you're going to perceive different ingredients in combination.
Yes. Like there is an art to listening, there is an art to tasting. You don't need to know how to cook to develop that. True, absolutely, even better. But even with the cooking, even for people that want to actually write songs, so even people want to actually cook something, it doesn't take much to learn how to cook a few things good. Okay, but at the same time, if there are schools of cooking, there are to become a chef, it takes a long time, if nothing else, because there's lots to learn, lots of possibility, lots of artistry to it. Okay, so sky's the limit. There are degrees in mastery. Okay, you can have one or two staples in your cooking, and they can be great, or you can become a chef, or you can be anything in between. And every time you can decide to take the next step or not. It's very gradual. It's true for cooking. It's true for music theory.
It's also true that you might be a bit hungry, and it would be better to know that this boiled egg is going to be ready in 6 minutes, the way you like it, rather than having to experiment every time to reinvent and discover when food is out. Oh dear, that chicken wasn't quite cooked enough. Now I'm really sick.
Yeah.
So you won't get sick from playing bad chords, unless you're very sensitive. But you also don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. Like if there's things that we already know, it's quite saves you time.
Exactly. And so here's the thing. Music theory, you can consider, with good approximation, music theory to be a lot of recipes, and you can decide which one you learn. And you learn the one that you like best. If you don't like jazz, you don't learn the recipe. If you like jazz, you learn the recipe. But these are recipes. And like recipes, the way you actually do them in your kitchen can change. Okay, you don't have to follow it exactly the same. You can get inspiration and do your own thing. So it's very interactive. It's very personal. There's lots of space for personal expression.
The other
Okay,
thing
it's
I like
not
about the
mathematics. Okay.
the other thing I like about the recipe analogy is that sometimes if a chord progression has already been used before, people can be suspicious about it. And they can say, well, this is not original. Therefore, I don't know if it's valid for me to, like, I want to be creative. But we've got an endless appetite to experience certain flavors. It won't be, Confucius did not say you can't eat the same pizza twice, but
Yeah,
it's aligned with other things that he did say. So, although you're going to be telling us lots of interesting ways to venture further afield. So, but nonetheless, it's perfectly valid to use chord progressions that are common and have been used before. That doesn't define how creative your song is going to be as a whole.
absolutely. No, I mean, and that's also the way it was taught at the beginning. They were teaching you a repertoire of chord progressions, how to mix them if you wanted to, and you off you go. Okay, I mean, if chord progression is the only thing that counts, then blues is one song because they
Well,
practically or two, because they practically use the same one or two chord progressions.
blues is like the hamburger.
Yeah. Well, okay. No, wait. This can actually get us into trouble.
Okay, but there's like when nobody's sick of hamburgers, are they? Well,
The thing is, but you see, that's the thing. In the case of blues, the chord progression is secondary, meaning that it gives you the background over which you do your own thing, because the blues is the expression, the improvisation, the phrasing, how you do things more than what exactly you do. The chord progression is just the background. Okay, they like that. They use that. Somebody changes the chord progression. I mean, it maybe still works, and there are many blues, jazz, chord progression, etc., and variations. But basically, that's what it is. That's what it is. And to take your example, yeah, it's like the chicken. But in how many ways you can cook chicken? Okay, so right. So yeah, the chord progression is the meat, but then you can do whatever you want with that.
and yeah, exactly. So there's no shame in reusing things. It doesn't mean you're lacking in originality. However, let's imagine we've got somebody at home right now and they've got a little bit of time to do some songwriting, and they're going to pick up their guitar or their keyboard and test out some
Yes,
different things. What's some
yes.
activity to do with exploring chords we could suggest for them that they could use to experiment in perhaps slightly new ways?
Oh yes, we can. There are so many. There are so many. One thing I will do is that I will write down. You guys know there are 12 major chords and 12 minor chords, and I'm talking only about triads right now. By the way, okay. C major, C sharp major, D major, D sharp major, E major, F sharp major, G sharp major, A major, A sharp major, B major. I'm using only sharps. You can use the flats. Doesn't matter because A sharp can be could be flat. Actually, it's usually could be flat. It doesn't really matter. 12 major triads, and you have the 12 minor triads. Just do the same thing, same minor after that. You have 24 chords. The first thing will be write them down, like just the names, like as a list. C major, C sharp major, etc. As a list. Then pick two. You can pick randomly, okay? You just close your eyes and put your finger on the piece of paper. Or you just pick two. However you do it, okay? You use a utility online to pick random numbers, whatever, okay? You ask your friend, hey, can you pick two of those? Two of those chords, any two. Two major chords or two minor chords or one major and one minor. And then you play those two chords one after each other. You will find an interesting thing. You will find that maybe the first time you play them, they will sound weird. But if you go back and forth a few times, your ear gets adjusted to the sound, and so every pair of chords will start to sound good after a couple of repetitions. This is a fantastic phenomenon, okay? When people do that, they start thinking, oh, so I can't trust my ear because everything sounds good if I play it a few times. No, that's good. That's good and that's normal because it means another thing. It means you can pick any two chords, okay, and make a song out of that. Because if you just repeat them a few times, they will just sound good. If anything, it will be hard to find something that you've never heard before. Because every combination of two chords has already been used somewhere. Some are more common than others. If you pick C and G or C and F, those are very common pairs. Other pairs are less common. C and F sharp, it's common in a specific kind of music. It's common, for instance, in movie soundtracks, but less common in pop music, for instance. Doesn't mean it's never been used. Everything has been used also in pop music, but the point of this is to start to break out of the usual things you do. To get some new sound under your fingers and to educate your ear to those different kind of connections or different kind of chord pairs. It also gives you confidence that literally whatever you do will sound good if you just insist. Okay? This exercise, I mean, when I just say that, and when you just listen to that, it doesn't seem particularly groundbreaking. And so you may be tempted to just go, okay, I got the idea. I don't have to do it. That would be wrong. The important thing of this exercise is not what I say. The important thing of this exercise is to play those two chords and have those sounds hit your ear back. You need to get the experience. You need to get the actual sound. You need to play them and hear the sound. If you don't do that, that exercise gave you nothing. You have to do it. All of music theory, all of it, is misunderstood because people think that once you know the mathematical rule, once you know the idea, once you know the concept, you're done. But in reality, music theory, it's an experience that you have to make. You need to get the idea and play it. If you don't get the experience, if you don't hear the sound hitting you back, you are not actually learning it. It will feel empty. You guys have heard so many people out there on YouTube telling you that music theory is useless, telling you that you don't have to learn it, telling you that you can totally do without. Those people never did the exercise. Of course, if you don't do that, if you don't do the exercise, if you don't hear the sound, of course music theory is useless. You are not using it. Of course it doesn't make sense. You need to play it. Okay, so you can take two chords, any two chords. I said C, F sharp. Okay, we can do that. Great for comedic effect. Okay. Okay, this is what two of them. I could take anything else. I could take, I don't know, A minor, F minor. They're not in key. That's the idea. A minor, F okay? Now, if you're thinking, I don't know how to play those chords on the guitar or the piano, or I cannot find the right shape, or whatever, well, you see, that's what you have to study right now. You have to study how to find those shapes, where to find them. It's not hard, okay? Meaning, it's not going to take that long, okay? You just need to find a good resource for that. You can give me a call, okay? You can send me an email, or you can go to Diana, or you can go to anybody else, and we can teach you how to find those chords. Not a problem. If you know where the chords are, great. Just play 2 of them. And that's one specific exercise you can make, and I would totally recommend you do that. In fact, I will totally recommend that you do that every day for a few weeks. Every day you pick 2 different pairs. Sorry, 1 different pair, 2 different chords, okay? That's easy, okay? Meaning that how many pairs do you have? Lots, okay? You will discover that what's really important is not so much if it's a C or an F or something, but more like the distance between those 2 chords and the quality between those 2 chords, so the interval and if they're major or minor. But at the end of the day, you do have quite a lot of pairs. Okay, you have at the end of the day, if you do your calculation, you have 48 different independent pairs. So if you do one a day, it will take a month and a half if you were systematic. But again, you can just pick randomly and just listen. Not a problem. You don't have to be that systematic. So you do that. You learn a lot. That's an exercise. There's another exercise you can do. So that was exercise number 1. Okay. Exercise number 2 works this way. You start by playing either a major or a minor triad somewhere on your guitar or your piano, fairly high. Okay, don't go this low. Okay, play it fairly high, and you know what? Play it on 3 strings maybe, rather than playing the full bar chord. Play it only on 3 strings. If this again doesn't make sense, it means that you need some help in finding those chords and actually understand where those chords are. No problem. Don't get stressed. It's easy. Give me a call. Anyway, you can play this chord here. This is a D minor made by the notes D, F, and A. What we're gonna do from here is this. We are gonna pick one of those 3 notes. I don't even need to know which is which. I just pick the note on the. I'm playing on string 2, 3, and 4. I'm gonna play one of those notes. Take one of those notes, anyone, and I'm gonna move this note down 1 or 2 frets. What you're gonna get may or may not be a major or minor triad. It could be something completely different. It could be something with a very, very complex name. But right now, I don't care about names. I'm just taking this and moving one of those notes down, let's say 2 frets, or maybe I'm moving this note here down, this note here down 1 fret. And then moving another one of those notes down 1 or 2 frets, and then maybe another one down 1 or 2 frets. Okay, and then just going down randomly. Every time I do it, I would do something different. I don't even remember what I did before, so I mean, I'm not trying to replicate it. And sometimes I get something that sounds great. Sometimes I get something that sounds occasionally awkward or meh. It's okay. And do it again. Do something different. Ooh, that stinks. Maybe I'm not gonna do that. Okay? It's a game. It's just a game. You're not gonna get something that sounds good every single time. It's just a game. But occasionally you get some interesting snippets that sounds good to your ear. Which one sound good to your ear will be different than what sound good to my ear or Diana's ear or somebody else's ear, because we all like different things. Okay, so the game here is not trying to find something good, because good in this case is very relative. The aim here is to find something that is good to you. Whenever you hear something and you're like, ooh, that was nice, good. Maybe transcribe that little thing you just played. Just the numbers on the fret, just the notes on the piano. Okay.
I think I'd need to film my hand so that I could replicate it. But or if you recorded yourself, then you'd be able to hear which bit and work it out. But
Yeah.
that's very cool. Is this something that you've used, both of these ideas, that they sound like things that you've done?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those are actual exercise I give to my students. Again, they can be more formal. They can be a bit more, and there are extensions to those too. Okay, but that's something I do give to my students with way more indication on how to play those things. Right now, I mean, I'm just with the time we have, that's what I can give you.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
It may take more time to explain all the extension and other things, but those are foundational exercises. And they are designed to break you out of just reading a chord chart and playing those and just listening to the same old thing. Even if you never use those chords or those progressions or those new things, it still opens up your ear, and it makes it easier for you to write songs or to listen to songs. One typical side effect of doing those exercises, I mean, actually playing them and listen, is that you start liking more music. There's music before that you couldn't understand, and so it sounded strange to you, and now it makes more sense. Or the music you like becomes more enjoyable because now you can hear better what's going on.
What I really like about one extra thing I really like about that, what you just showed us, is that you are not playing things that you know. So if you've ever put your guitar, if you're a standard tuning guitar player, and you've ever put your guitar into DADGAD, now you don't know what any of the notes are, or you don't know what they all are. So you are exploring completely helplessly based on what things sound like. And so there can be this kind of weird thing that happens when you become a little bit more of an intermediate or an advanced player on guitar, and you know all the notes and you know chord shapes, is that you can sort of get slightly trapped in that knowledge. And doing it this way, where you've got a little brief that you're going to change one finger, it breaks you out of thinking based on what you know. So I think that's when you don't know all the stuff, it's hard to imagine that it could be restrictive knowing more. But your kind of early stage ear is actually very priceless, because you're just reacting completely according to what something sounds, not according to things that you already know. So I especially like that about I think that I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to that as being a really important component that can be hard to re-find when you've got to a certain stage in your knowledge of the fretboard and your playing.
Exactly. And that's why I recommend starting those exercises as soon as possible. Don't wait until you know everything. Okay. And you should always keep playing stuff that you don't understand. You see, we have this myth here that you know more music theory, so you always know what you're doing. But your reach will always extend your grasp. Okay. Meaning you will know more things. But at the same time, you will be able to reach further away to stuff that it's even stranger, and you don't know exactly what's going on. And that's okay, because by doing those exercises, you kind of build confidence that you can still predict the sound one way or another, even if you don't know the name, or if you don't know what chord it is, if you don't know the shape, because you can hear how the voices move down. Okay, this is not something that happens immediately. Agreed, but it does happen fairly soon. So the point here again is don't let your knowledge limit you. If you ask me to name those chords, I can probably sit down, I can probably find a name for them. What would that change? Not much. The sound is still the same. It will just hinder me to have to name all those chords, to have to identify, analyze all those chords while I'm doing this exercise. I'm trying to develop more of an instant relationship with the instrument. Theory, in this case, is just the idea, hey, take this chord, which is my starting point, and move every voice, every note down 1 or 2 frets. That's the extent of the theory I'm using. And that's enough in this case. Okay. So the thing is that there is all the formal part of theory that gives you indication, and then there's a big and complex system that you can study and become very good at that, and it gives you instant recipes for what you want to do. And there is also flying off the seat of your pants, okay, and using an idea or two. But you should do both those things. You should do both those things. That's what makes you a good musician. Okay, that is composition, improvisation, kind of at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to trying those out myself. What about, let's say, so those are some great ways for immediately getting into some randomized chord terrain and developing your ability to get away from things that you know. What about if we had a melodic motif as our starting point, and we wanted to look at which chords might go with this melodic motif?
Good idea. Good idea. So yes, it's another compositional technique. You start from a melody or a melodic motif, and you start to see what works, what chord work with this motif. So the first thing is to know what are the notes in your motif. Okay. So I'm gonna take something. Let's see, C, B, E. Okay. The note C, B. So here's a general idea. Again, it's not a rule. It's not a law. Okay. Because at the end of the day, you can play any chord under this. Some of them will sound really weird, really dissonant, but I mean, there's nothing physically preventing you from doing it. So you can play any chord under this, and maybe you like the super weird effect that will happen. Okay. But at the same time, let's say most of the time when we work in music, we want to search the consonants. That's what most people like. That's what most people seem to be attracted to. The harmony, again, harmony, consonants coming together, means that the chord will contain one or more notes of the melody. The first thing to do will be either write a table where you write all the chords and the note in those chords, or find a table, okay? Find something that tells you C major is C, E, G, D major is D, F sharp, A, etc. And then kind of reverse search into that. So I have a C, I have a B, I have an E. Are there chords that contain one of those notes? Yes, many. There are 6 triads that contain the C major, this the C note. There are 6 triads that contain the E note, and there are 6 triads that contain the E note. Sorry, C, B, E. Yes. 6 triads contain C, 6 triads contain B, 6 triads contain E. If you don't believe me, go and check. Okay. Some of those overlap, of course. Okay. Some triads that contain C also contain E. Some triads that contain B also contain E. So the total is not 18. Okay, it's less than 18. But there are several. All those are good candidates to be played under these melodic motifs. triads that contain two of those notes, so triads that contain E and B or E and C, no triads contains B and C, but triads contain E and B or E and C would be our prime candidate to try the more consonant. So they contain two notes out of three in my melodic motif. So it's just a game of pattern matching, okay? See what are the notes in your melodic motif, find chords that contain those notes, try them under that. Again, is that a law? No. Can you occasionally use a chord that doesn't even contain any of those three? Oh, yes, it happens. But it's rare, comparatively rarer. It's way more common to have chords that contain one or probably two of those notes. So I could play C major. So I have C, C, B, E, right. So I have C major, C, B, E, which, and I play the C major on under that. Seems to work. C major contains C and E. There is another chord that contains C and E, and that's A minor. And that works too. There are two chords that contain E and B, and those are E major and E minor. So I could play, let me see. E minor, or I could play E major. E major will have this very dissonant moment when I play the C. Maybe E minor is the best one. Sorry, man. That's better. Or again, E major, which is dissonant, but not bad. So, under these little melodic motifs, my first chords that I will try would be C major and A minor, E minor and E major, because those are the chords that contain two notes out of three in these melodic motifs. Okay? You see me doing this very fast. I pick easy notes, honestly. Okay, I made my life easier. The first time you do it, of course, it's gonna take a little bit of time because you're just searching all over the chord, etc., etc. Eventually, you will learn the notes in the chord. It really doesn't take much. It's just a matter of exercise and trying to do this little game over and over and over. And you will be able to do these very fast or even in real time. Okay, so if the first time those exercises are hard for you, don't get discouraged. Okay. And again, right now I'm giving kind of middle of the ground exercise. So both beginner and advanced player can find some value on it. If you're an absolute beginner, you may need a bit of help to get at the level to do those with ease. And again, call me, call Diana, find a teacher, not a problem. If you're advanced, you have to push a bit more of the envelope and play and get in more interesting motifs or something that it's really hard to, I mean, there are three notes, but it's really hard to find chords that contain two of those notes, which can come with exercise. Or you can have a motif of 4 or 5 or 6 notes and see what happens, okay? So there's that, okay? You can expand the exercise, or you can make it smaller. You can have a motif of only 2 notes rather than 3, and this will make it easier. Make sense so far? So that's where I will start. Match the note of the melodic motif to the chord. Now, notice an interesting thing. Since I have more than one chord, okay, I can keep the same motif as a melody and change the chord. I could start from E minor, and then A minor, and then C major. I may play something else here. F a B major, incidentally. Right, E minor. A minor, C major, B major. Okay, in this case, I'm thinking in the key of E minor because all those chords, I mean, E minor, C major, A minor, can come from the key of E minor. They can also come from the key of A minor or the key of C major, by the way, or even the key of G major. But I'm thinking in E minor right now, and I'm thinking, yeah. And so the chord progression makes sense to be E minor, sorry, yeah, E minor, C, A minor, B, because by experience I know that the fifth chord of the key will take me back to the E minor. But again, see, knowing a bit of music theory and a few principles gives me idea on what will work here. So now I have a little song, but starting from 3 notes, finding the different chords, creating a little chord progression with those chords, maybe adding something at the end, adjusting a little bit. Again, there are no rules. Once I have something, I can go by ear and decide to change it here and there. I don't have to be stuck with the idea, let's play the same thing over and over. I can just hear it and decide I like it, I don't like it, and change it accordingly. Make sense? So, start from 3 notes, you get something. Do you like this? Great. You don't like it? Change the melodic motif, change the chord order. I could have started did something different. Maybe here. In this case, I'm thinking in the key of C major, and then putting the chord in the order C major, A minor, E minor, and then I'm playing a G at the end. Slightly different feeling, same melodic fragment. Okay. I'm just playing with it. I'm just playing with it.
Something I really like about all of this is the way that it gives you something to react to.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think lots of the times we feel like we have no ideas, or we're not inspired, or we don't know what we want to say, or we don't know what to write about, or we don't have anything particularly in our minds at that moment. And I think sometimes the quickest way out of that is to give yourself something to respond to, because we usually feel like we can trust our responses quite well. And like even just watching you there, you were kind of looking for a particular sound that you wanted to hear, like you knew what it was that you wanted to hear. It's a very direct and therefore reliable set of responses. And so when one is feeling uninspired, I think going from the premise of I'm going to do some things that are going to give me something to react to gets you a lot further than, oh, what's my idea? Or what do I want to say? Sometimes just you can define what it is you're interested in by testing your response to different possibilities. And the other thing I personally love that quality when a melody note is continued. And you gave the suggestion for people who are quite new to this to just go for short motifs, but even if you just go for one, and if you're somebody who's going to sing, you sing your one note and change the chord underneath it and get used to singing the note so it's stable. You'll feel it as well as hearing it. So let's hope this guitar is in tune. I'm just gonna hum that note, and then I'm going for another chord. It's still got the same note, but it feels really different. And now I'm gonna go to another chord, and it feels different again. And keep it stable, and I'm gonna go to another one. A bit harder to keep it stable there, and then I'm going back to that one. So that's a quick way to just experiment and build your own kind of stability with how something sounds while you're doing it.
Yes, exactly. And singing is good because again you feel it. It's not you have to keep that note. So you kind of start feeling the feeling.
You're listening in a slightly different way when you're singing because you're trying to keep it stable against this different. So yeah. So you don't have to be saying that wasn't, top of the pops quality. But you'll be able to, you don't need, doesn't need to be it just needs, the tone just needs to be stable. So you don't have to be an incredible singer or even any kind of singer to do this. So let's imagine that we had chosen those chords, E minor and then A minor, and then C, or some other chords from your or even from your first exercise what are there ways that we can connect the chords? So you gave us this exercise where we could connect the chords by moving one fret at a time or 2 frets.
Yes.
Oh, look, I'm a genius. See? Yeah. You know, this stuff works.
Yeah. I mean, and if you were to name what you just played, some of the chord names would be fairly long. It would be like, how?
What
theory did you use to find these? And then people like, yeah, you see these, it's a secondary dominant or an augmented sixth in another key. No, I'm just moving down a fret or two.
Are there other ways that we can use this chromatic idea to help us connect chords that wouldn't necessarily seem like they were that close together?
Yeah, you see, that's one thing. I had a starting point and I just went down, but you cannot have a starting point and an ending point and do the same thing and just target the ending point. Okay, you could go from this chord to this chord. This way. Okay, which is interesting. Okay, rather than just going. I mean, you could go just this, but you could, or okay, all in different ways. You may like one of those options more than the others. Okay, that's the thing. That's the other thing. People always think like that they have to think slowly somehow. I mean, yeah, let's sit down, let's calculate, let's what is the secondary dominant of this? What is the key? What the right modulation? It's okay. You can do it. You can do it. Or you can just try it. Okay, get an idea and try. Okay, and one of the things that I think we lost in music theory, and it was very clear, for instance, in the Baroque era, is that pretty much every idea, every concept you learn, once you understand the sound, is it worth to spend a little bit of time trying to make it faster? Meaning, try to be able to improvise with that, even if it's not perfect. Just try to be able to apply it in real time, give or take, not at performance level maybe, but it's worth to speed it up. That's the idea, okay? It's worth to, okay, I want to play secondary dominant. Can I see them on the fretboard so I can play them in real time rather than having to do all the mental calculations, for instance? Yes, you can. Is it possible to have some other ideas where I just thinking on the fretboard, play a fret higher, a fret lower, play this thing, change the shape in this specific way so it's very visual rather than having to do the calculation mentally? Yes, you can. And once you do that and you start to have this music theory at your fingertip, the whole thing changes because you have a faster interaction with the thing. Okay? Think about that this way. The kind of conversation you have, if you are texting somebody, or if you're writing them a long letter and sending them via snail mail, a real actual mail, the kind of conversation are completely different. On a long letter, you typically write a lot. On a physical letter, you typically write a lot, and then they answer to that, etc., and the conversation goes in a specific way. If you're texting them, there can be a much easier, a much faster interaction between the two of you. The speed of communication changes the nature of communication. The speed at which you can apply music theory changes the way you apply music theory. And you get different things out of that. Okay? So that's the idea. Spending a little bit of time when you study to make those things faster or in real time. Or, I mean, you may not make it in real time in a day, okay? But just starting to think in a way that works as a process, and you don't have to think forever to find what you need to find.
Well, this is all great stuff. I now I've got one more question, which I know we don't have all the time in the world, but something which can give us a real sense of development in a song is when we have a change of key. Either, and I don't just mean the Eurovision, I don't know if anyone watching saw Eurovision last week. There is apparently an obligatory key change in the last chorus of the song, but it's always the same kind of key change. You're like, oh, I'm in the sauna. Oh, I'm in the sauna. You know, it's just that kind of key change. But there's lots of songs, like, for example, there's a really famous song in the UK called Waterloo Sunset, and he does this quite little subtle move where he pretty much goes into another key and then comes back. And I used to really be into the Kinks when I was younger, and I never really, you know, I just listened to the songs and I had no idea why I liked certain bits. And so he, you know, that little bit goes, as long as I gaze on Waterloo sunset, I'm in paradise. And then he goes, every day I look at the world from my window. And then we're just suddenly into a little different key, and then we come back. And there's obviously lots of examples we could cite of songs that travel into a different key in a more, and then like don't return or do return, or they go for more chords. Is there like a relatively, like, what's a simplish way that we could experiment with changing keys, either just in a little section of our song or in another song, to give us one option for differentiating or creating a little bit of a lift of energy?
Well, an idea will be to see at the keys that are close by. Okay, so if you take the key of C major has no sharps or flats, like A minor. There are two keys that have only one sharp, which are G major and E minor. And there are two keys that have only one flat, that are F major and D minor. Those are called the adjacent keys. The keys close by, okay? One idea would be to check all the chords in C major, check all the chords in G major or E minor, check all the chords in F major or D minor. And then while you are in C major, you borrow some chord from either G major or F major, or E minor or D minor. Some of the chords will be in common. The keys are close by. There's only one note of difference, so some chords will be in common, but some other chords will not be in common. And you can just borrow this chord and put it in your song, with none being the wiser, okay? You are in C major. Get a chord from F major, like B flat, and then come back in C major. Or get a chord from D major. This D major chord comes from the G major key. And you can do both. I can get this chord from F major, this chord from G major, and back to C. Maybe putting them too close, it's a bit awkward sometimes, but you can do both. So you just look at the keys.
I love how that gives we can instantly hear it when it comes in. It gives an instant little energy lift, and it's such an easy thing to do when you're writing a song that's got this otherwise flowing kind of diatonic sound. I'm going to get out of your way because I think you've got more to say.
Diana, you okay?
Yeah, no, I was just getting out of your way because I felt like I was coming in while you were in the middle of your flow, and that there was doubtless going to be something else, and I didn't want to.
No, it's okay.
But I love that it's such a kind of, yes, you have to look at the chords in the key, but once you've done that, it will give you something that sounds like a change, and then you get that little bit of energy from the unexpectedness, but it's not so far away. Exactly,
it's just a special color, like something that's not what you were expecting, but it still works. It's because the keys are close by, and so
it's like pressing
your ear adapts.
It's like pressing the booster button.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's the trick. Okay. Now, does this gives you a lot of possibilities? No, it gives you only a few. Okay. And right now, by the way, I use only major chords. You can use the minor chords too. But it already starts expanding your repertoire here, your possibility, what you can do. Okay. If you want to modulate further, modulate means change key. If you want to change the key further, if you want to change key in an interesting way, etc. There are many more ways of doing that. I actually published a course last year, Modulation Mastery. If you go on musictheoryforguitar.com, you can search for Modulation Mastery, and that's a course specifically on how to change key, all the possible ways known so far to change key. And I say known so far because music theory, I mean, it's a living discipline. We are still finding new ways of changing key. But I review methods from the Baroque era, methods from the 20th century, the 21st century too, okay, to change key. And I show you how to use them in your song and make them sound good. And you can do crazy changes of key, okay, and make them sound good. But anyway, there's lots to learn on that. There's lots to learn because there's lots you can do. The music is very big, okay. And again, as an idea, just pick chords from the keys close by, okay. The keys close by are the keys that have only one extra sharp or an extra flat with respect to where you are, okay. And that already gives you a splash of color. Make sense? That's pretty much what I have here with the time we have. Diana?
Yes, I would say that although we didn't talk about it that way, when you sort of described the keys that are next to each other have got 4 common chords, and if you use one of the ones that's not a common chord, then we're going to hear that change. Another one it's very simple. It's just make the minor key in the chord major. That's not really changing key. That's just finding a different color. I mean,
it is changing key because if you're using different notes than the key you are.
Yeah. So, for example, if we keep C, and we have we've got C, and we've got G, and we go to an E major instead of E minor. That that's slightly unexpected sounding. Sounds a bit Spanish. So that's I wouldn't necessarily, yes, so that's just a quick way of finding something different too. But in fact we could say that the common tone thing that we talked about earlier is also another way of changing key. So when we talked about having one note, and then we're going to keep that note and go to a different chord. So we're getting to different our brain's able to connect it because of the note that's in common, but we are venturing in those cases probably to somewhere different. Let's say this is my melody, here it is, not very venturous, but now I'm going over here and it does sound like we've gone somewhere different. So having a pivot, like a note that you're using to pivot, can be also quite simple. So yeah, well, thank you very much, Tommaso. This has been extremely enlightening. I'm going to enjoy my little progressions here. As well as giving us all these great ideas, Tommaso has got something for us to download. I'm going to show you what it is. It is this. Tell us about this, Tommaso.
This is a collection of 18 tips to make your pentatonic solo sound professional. Now, everybody, when they want to learn to play the pentatonic scale, okay, they learn licks, okay? They want to get a book on licks and learn all those licks. The licks are nice, interesting, sure, no say no, but they don't teach you much because it's hard to adapt those licks to your improvisation, to your solos, etc., etc. On the other hand, licks are not the building blocks. There are the building blocks of licks, and that's exactly what I do in these free ebooks. It's free, completely free. You guys go downloading it completely free. You don't have to learn all the 18 tips. You get this ebook. By the way, the ebook comes with videos. You can see me play this stuff, and you can see me, and I will show you how different options on how to improvise. But you learn 2 or 3 of those tips, and you start just fooling around with those, and you will find that you will recreate a number of licks that you know, and a number of licks, similar licks, that you don't know yet and never heard, because now you are working at the level at which the guitar masters that created those licks were working, not at the level of licks, which is already a made thing, but at the level just below that, the building blocks at which you can create licks. It's a way more creative approach to improvisation, and it gives you a better sound. And again, it's completely free. Okay, no string attached.
I have this and I can vouch that it's great and I thoroughly recommend it. I think I remember when I first learnt the pentatonic scale, I was actually kind of sad because I thought blues was mystical. And so
Right.
when people were like, well, it's these notes and that's what blues is, I was like, what? You know, I didn't want it to be that simple. And in the end,
Yeah,
of course, it's not that simple.
of
But
course it's not.
but I was a little bit. I was like, oh my goodness, there's like the man behind the Wizard of Oz curtain has just come out, and it's just six. It's 5 notes. I don't know what
Yeah,
to
but
do.
again, you see, that's why you started that the whole thing is magic.
Exactly.
Then you understand how it works, and it feels not magic again.
Yeah, and then you
But
understand
then you actually start to understand how it actually works.
exactly.
Okay, and it becomes magic
Like
again. But now
again,
you can do the magic.
exactly.
Okay, so you have to go through this phase. The magic is not in the note, in the combination, in the chord. The magic is in knowing those things and then learning how to apply them. And that's why I say you have to play the exercises. If you just read this stuff and you just go like, okay, I got the concept, you are just going to the phase of losing the magic. And that's bad.
Yeah,
Okay.
you get
But
stuck
if
in the
you,
bottom of the U-shaped happiness and the
yes,
U-shaped music curve.
yes, exactly. You go like, okay, I know how everything works. Everything is, but if you play those things, if you implement them in your instrument, if you work with it, if you fool around with it, you still go to the phase like, yeah, everything seems a bit the same. It's just this, it's just this. And then you start to realize, no, it's not just this, because I can combine those things. And with those notes, I can do a lot of things I've already heard. The magic comes out again. And then you
Even more
start to have
powerful
fun with
magic.
music. Yes. You become the magician.
Yes.
That's
Well, I highly recommend everyone grab Tommaso's ebook. I'm going to put it up again. You can get it from the QR code or the URL. I also have one on how to write lyrics. If I'd had this before I wrote my first few albums, I think I probably would have felt less offended when one of the producers suggested some edits. A process that's totally normal, but that I never knew was normal. But yeah, it's got the Tommaso talks about the building blocks of pentatonics. This has got some foundational ways that we respond to language. And once you kind of understand this, there's 2 or 3 things that have made a huge difference to my understanding and the way that I approach what kind of language is going to go in different sections of the song. Why, for example, I might feel like the song's going nowhere, or I've got stuck, I've written a verse and a chorus, and now everything seems lame, like why that is, and what the commonest reasons for that are. So download that too. It's got a little suggestion of places of exercises and a writing calendar, so you can learn how you can practice writing lyrics as well as just having an idea for a song that you want to develop. So thank you very much, Tommaso, for coming to show us
Thank
those
you for
things.
having me.
It's been fascinating, and I know people are going to find it very valuable. I am going to put that slide back up so that anyone who wants to grab those things can get them. But thank you very much, and until the next time.
Enjoy.